All right. Well, it's my absolute honor and pleasure to introduce our first speaker of our LC Leader Spotlight. This is actually part of a greater LC leadership series that we've set up. But today's speaker is Kermit Mankiller. And just to give a little more information about Kermit, he serves as the executive officer for the Nez Perce Tribal Enterprises, which operates the Clearwater River Casino and Lodge, the Itzy Yaya Casino, and the Nez Perce Express convenience stores on the Nez Perce Indian Reservation in Idaho. Also Red Wolf Golf Club in Clarkston, Washington, and Zim's Hot Springs Resort in New Meadows, Idaho. Mr. Mankiller manages all business operations as well as business development for the Nez Perce Tribal Enterprises. Prior to joining the Nez Perce Tribal Enterprises staff as the Business Operations Director in 2013, Mr. Mankiller operated KC Mankiller Consulting, a management consulting firm which offered professional level training and management services to tribal organizations and federal contractors, specializing in accounting and finance, strategic planning, and tribal affordable housing issues. As a consultant, Mr. Mankiller trained hundreds of Indian housing professionals, board members, and tribal council members in a variety of management and technical subjects each year, and has assisted tribal organizations throughout Indian country. Kermit Mankiller currently serves as a board member for Valley Vision and the Clearwater Economic Development Association, and is a founding member of the Ninipu Community Development Fund Board of Directors. Mr. Mankiller is a member of the Nez Perce Tribe, received his Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from Lewis Clark State College, where he served as ASLCSC president in the 1986-1987 academic year. Mr. Mankiller also received an MBA from Gonzaga University. And in 2018, Mr. Mankiller was awarded the LC State Alumni of the Year. Today, Kermit and Sally Jo Mankiller have 4 adult children and 4 grandchildren and reside in Sweetwater, Idaho. And Kermit, with that, welcome, and thank you for being our first speaker for LC Leader Spotlight.
Well, thank you very much, Tate. It's great to be here, at LC. Personally, I am a warrior for life. Member of the class of 1987. Served as the president, of the student government during my time here. And I didn't mention that. Tate threw that in about the alumni of the year thing a couple of years ago, and which I was kind of surprised by that. But everything here, at LC, was great. I had an absolutely wonderful experience here. It is, it's really nice to, have an opportunity to be back on campus, and coincidentally, the room that I'm in right now to do this presentation is part of a suite of offices that I was in back when I was a student here. It hasn't been that long ago. When you say the years out loud, it sounds like it was a while ago. But no, I had a great experience here at LC. The campus is even more beautiful now than it was when I was here. So I would recommend this place to anybody that's looking for a solid education. It was a great springboard for me, to move on to a professional career and all of that. And I guess just to share a little bit about my personal experience here, beyond my biography. I had a series of life events occur while I was here at LC, and so that's part of the reason the place is so special to me. I mean, it was a springboard, but also I was a student here when Sally and I were married. And, we, in 2020, we celebrated our 35th anniversary. So our history with LC goes back, decades. And, our first child was born while I was a student here, and so on. So, so this place has got a special place, in our heart, in my heart. And so I'm really thankful, for the opportunity to get back here. It was a great experience. Even the subject at hand, leadership and confidence, I was exposed to a lot of leadership opportunities while I was a student here at LC, including, some involvement in politics. I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to substitute in the state Senate while I was a student. Learned a lot through that, as well as, different roles that I played in student government. And then, like a lot of you that are current students here, I worked full time while I completed my degree. So anyway, yeah, I could probably sit here and talk for quite a while about my experience here. But anyway, I'm glad, to see, the folks in the room downstairs, and welcome also, to anybody that's watching online. I guess just a couple of acknowledgements, thanks to, Tate, as well as Holly, for, doing the organizing for this. And then also just want to shout out to, a couple of friends of mine that are VIPs here, President Pemberton. Always a pleasure to run into her, appreciate the positive energy she brings to the campus, as well as Andy Hansen. Andy and I play golf together sometimes, and seems like we go way back too. So anyway, I'm sure there are other friends here that, that I'm not acknowledging, but, just wanted to shout out to those two. But anyway, I guess just, to get into the presentation, my presentation's about confidence and leadership. So it's real fitting, that we're here at LC, because, the leadership as well as confidence, those were a couple of traits that those traits really were honed, during my time here at LC. But also, as we get started, I just want everybody to keep in mind that, my presentation is not, academic. Some of this might sound kind of academic, but I'm just taking advantage of the opportunity to share some of my observations, and I guess just some of the lessons that I've learned regarding leadership, regarding confidence, and especially regarding leading with confidence. So anyway, like I said, keep in mind, this is, it's not Drucker, it's not McGregor, it's not Maslow. It's something a little lighter than that. So I hold a leadership position in my professional life. I'm an executive officer, which is a nice fancy title, which just means that I get to take responsibility for everything, good or bad. So sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. But I think one of the first points that I want to make is just that, as we talk about leadership, there are technical aspects to leadership. There are techniques, there are different methods you can use for leadership. And so I've learned a lot about those, the techniques or the technical aspects during my career. And personally, I'm sure I'm a much better leader and manager, and I'm more confident now than when I started out, all those years ago. In fact, leading and confidence go hand in hand, in my estimation, and so in my mind, it would be really difficult to lead for very long, if you lacked a basic confidence. And personally, I guess just to share a little bit about, where I come from, I was very fortunate to be raised to be a confident person. I was in one of those households where, we were taught to compete, we were taught to reach out, and grab a hold of the things, that were important. And so, anyway, my family, especially my mom, convinced me at an early age that, I could do anything that I put my mind to. I remember growing up trying to decide whether I was going to be an astronaut or a professional football player or a doctor or whatever. And I, every day, even now, I thank God I believed her, and that I still believe her, because I still feel like I could do anything that I set my mind to. So anyway, part of, building that confidence, number one, my mom made sure that I knew stories of people who had achieved great things against the odds. So Jim Thorpe, was a great example. Jesse Owens, was another example that I was exposed to. And of course, Billy Mills. She introduced me personally to Billy Mills. And I heard his story, and he tells his story very well. And if you're not familiar with Billy Mills, he won the 10,000 meters at the Tokyo Olympics in 1964. He's a Lakota from over in Lakota country. And she introduced me to Billy Mills. He told me his story. He tells his story very well. But what I got out of his story was he knew he could win the gold medal at Tokyo, even if nobody else thought that he could. So it occurred to me at that point that confidence is knowing. Okay, so keep that in mind. The idea that confidence, it is a matter of knowing. And in Billy Mills's case, he knew he could win. So while the rest of the world was shocked that he won that gold medal, he knew he was going to win. And when you watch that race, you can kind of see it on his face, that he wasn't really surprised. So anyway, a quick question, just going forward, obviously, we're not in the same room, so we can't necessarily have an answer to this, but I'm just wondering, how many of you grew up knowing, knowing that you can do anything that you set your mind to. And those of you that feel that way, even those of you that don't feel like you could do anything, give all of this some consideration. People that know that they can do anything they set their mind to, somebody convinced them that they could do that. In my experience, it was my mom and it was a lot of other people, but somebody had faith in you. Okay, so just consider, that is part, of knowing, that is part of confidence, is people having faith in you. For some of you, your confidence grew, out of something that you experienced. An experience convinced you, particularly if you had to overcome something, against the odds and all of that. A lot of us have had those experiences, and a lot of confidence, was born, of overcoming an obstacle. Another issue in knowing, what role models or what models or advice were you given? Nowadays, with the internet and YouTube and all of that, there's a lot of TED Talks and there's other things like that you can look to. But also, the role models, I think are really important, not only for confidence, but also for leadership. Some of you may have had a mentor. If you do have a mentor, or if you did have a mentor, definitely, appreciate those people. I was very fortunate to have a lot of examples and several mentors. I believe that I've still got a couple of mentors, out there, even at this stage in my career. So once again, that question, can you do anything that you set your mind to? And, I'm just assuming that, some of you are doing that right now, here at LC. Some of you are completing an education that maybe you never thought that you would, complete your education. Maybe the people around you, didn't believe you could. But you're proving that right now. So just keep that in mind. Everybody that's working their way through the academic world, they're proving that they can do something there. So, just that basic question, for most of you that are here, pursuing your education, I believe that you're going to succeed. That's why you're here. So if you kind of waver on that, if you're not absolutely sure that you're going to succeed, just keep in mind that you don't have to be 100%. You just have to be over 50%. You just have to know that there's the potential that you can succeed. But anyway, we'll come back to confidence. I've got a bunch of information to present on confidence, but do need to have a quick discussion on leading, though. And leading, I think it's not less important, but it's less stressed in my particular presentation. So anyway, I just kind of want to run through the idea of leading. So the basic question is, what is leading? There's an academic definition of leading, and it falls very closely to management. It has something to do with, I'm trying to remember this from back in fact, this morning I was trying to remember who my management professor was, and I'm kind of at a loss for that. So I'm sure that whoever it was, they made a great impression, while I was here, but for some reason I can't recall them. But anyway, the academic definition, has to do with, group efforts towards organizational goals, blah, blah, blah. There's a bunch of academic definitions out there. But, when we look at leadership, from ground level, though, there's a few different ways that we look at it. In fact, some of you might fall into one of these classifications. One is practical, and that's just the basic idea that somebody's got to lead. Sometimes we're in these groups where, nobody really wants to lead, or, there's not, a natural leader and all of that, but somebody has to take the lead, so sometimes leading is just a practical matter of somebody having to be out front. Sometimes leadership is a personal trait or a personal ability. And sometimes it just comes natural to groups that a certain person or a certain type of person should be the leader. Okay? So sometimes there's natural leaders. Sometimes there's leaders of groups, that just kind of, it just feels very comfortable for them to be in the lead. A lot of us, though, what we run into in the leadership context is situational leadership. That is the idea of, just having to lead out of necessity. Okay. And for most of you that are watching this, if you haven't ran into a situational leadership opportunity yet, it's just a matter of time. In life, we always will run into these situations where either we or someone else has to rise to the occasion. Okay. But anyway, I think we all understand leading as generally as having the most influence in our group. That could be the most influence in terms of authority, or being the most persuasive, or whatever. But anyway, we have some quality that causes people to look to us to lead. We also understand that the role of leaders is to achieve group or organizational goals. Okay, so very basically, the leadership deal is a little bit simpler to define than confidence is. So anyway, with that all being said, let's go ahead and move on to the idea of leading with confidence, which is the title of the presentation. So first of all, let me just suggest that you should all lead with confidence. Okay. See how easy that was to say? You should all lead with confidence. Great suggestion, great recommendation. I'd recommend that to everybody. But also, I think it's important to recognize that we all have varying degrees of confidence, depending on what it is that we're trying to do and whether or not we're well versed in that. So some of us, we're extremely confident professionally. We're extremely confident, in things that we do regularly. But sometimes we run into situations that we didn't anticipate, or maybe that we're not prepared for, and we have less confidence there. So anyway, make sure that you recognize that we have varying degrees of confidence, and a lot of times that depends on the situation that we're in. Second, we got to consider confidence, as a skill, as being part of your skill set. Sometimes people are born confident. Sometimes people are born looking confident, but they're not really confident. Sometimes people are born feeling confident and looking confident, but really they're foolish. So anyway, it's important that we understand that confidence is a skill, and some people have more skill or less skill than others. So give that some thought. Is confidence something inherited, or is it something that's developed? Now, personally, I kind of fall on the side of it being split between those two. I think we're all born with, a certain level of confidence, depending on our family, our childhood and early school environment, other influences and so on. But some of us, in order to gain confidence, that we're not born with, we just have to be challenged in some way. We have to have that opportunity to rise to the occasion, to improvise, to do whatever is necessary to, quote unquote, rise to the occasion. So anyway, that being said, the confidence is something that you can build. One of the examples that I always use is to get people to think about this, is that, confidence isn't always this great big overarching deal, that's going to determine success or failure on a large scale. Sometimes it's a very simple thing. So in fact, when I was here at LC, I saw myself as as a very confident person in all of that. But like I mentioned, I worked, while I went to school, and I remember one semester right after I started here, I had a finance class. It was at 8 a.m. And at the time I was working a graveyard shift. And so I'd have to be late for this class every day. So I'd show up, I'd always be about 10 minutes late. I remember the first few sessions of that class, just being terrified to go in there, to walk into that room late. Everybody else was already there. The professor was already teaching, and it was had a little lapse of confidence in walking into there. What will people think? How will they look at me? Why am I always late? Those types of things. That self-doubt. Those self-imposed barriers, I guess, is one way that you could look at it. I kind of more or less had to have a talk with myself and convince myself that, hey, I was paying for my own education. I had a right to be in there. I had to go to work in order to pay for my education. So everybody really kind of needed to understand that. And so basically, it was a challenge to me. And so I challenged myself, and I built the confidence to walk into that room regularly, even though I had to be late. So I know that sounds like a relatively simple thing, but it's important to recognize when we discuss confidence that it's not always a great big giant deal. It's not always jumping off the bridge. It's not always running into business or things like that. It's not always risky. Sometimes it's very simple. But the point of that story, though, is, the confidence is something which can be built. And then once again, just as I said in the beginning, confidence is knowing, knowing that we can succeed. So I just threw this little sentence in here that I basically preach, and that is confidence breeds opportunity. Opportunity breeds more confidence. Okay. And success, which that's what we're all looking for, is success. Success is a function of knowing you will succeed. Okay. So just keep in mind, we rarely succeed by accident. We have to challenge ourselves, and we have to know that we're going to succeed. So I guess just kind of shifting gears to, we talked a little bit about leadership, talked a little bit about confidence. So let's jump into leading with confidence. Okay. That's the centerpiece of the presentation. So I've just got a basic question. Why is leading with confidence important? And there are a number of reasons why we have to have that combination of effective leadership and confidence. Number one, leading with confidence allows us to do the right things for the right reasons. Okay, it's important that we're confident in leading our teams or leading our organizations or whatever it is that we're having to lead. If you're not confident, you run the risk of being influenced by self-interested, or sometimes devious interests. Or the other downfall of not leading with confidence is that you may not remain committed to your goals. Your organization may meander, and you might end up doing something in the end that's completely different than what you started out doing. So confidence is part of sticking to the plan. It's part of goal achievement, and so on. Let's see, another point about leading with confidence is that it allows us to lead diverse groups, and the ability to lead among diverse individuals is probably more important now than it ever has been. I think even if, for most of you that are students, if you look around the classroom, you recognize that, diversity is a reality wherever you go. And for those of us in the workplace, when we look around the workplace, the same thing is true. There's just a lot of diversity out there. And, by diversity, we don't necessarily mean race and ethnicity and things like that, but just, different experiences that people have, different expectations that they have, and different perspectives that they have on leadership. So just keep in mind that, confidence, the important thing about confidence in that context is confidence is universally recognized. If you're confident, people recognize that across cultures, backgrounds, professions, organizations, and so on. So leading with confidence is a real asset in terms of getting people to basically follow you. Okay, leading with confidence also helps us to lead and manage in a consistent manner. If we are truly confident, we understand our priorities and how to achieve success. Okay, so when we talk about knowing, that Billy Mills story, he knew he could win. Okay, so that's why we have to have confidence as leaders too. So we do understand our priorities. We understand how to achieve success. That is, we know that we can win because we know how to win. Okay, relatively simple. Let's see. And a couple of important things about leading with confidence, however, are though, number one, it facilitates leading with conviction. And leading with conviction, to me, basically what that means is that in our work life or in our leadership process, we live out our values, our personal values, organizational values, and so on. And that's generally what we're trying to get out of our teams. The more committed our teams are, to our values, our goals, our planning, and all of that, the more successful our organization is going to be, and the simpler it's going to be to lead. So, the confidence combined with the leadership, it creates employees, managers, and so on, that will, in their own groups, lead with conviction. And that, if you're able to achieve that, that's a great big giant deal in management. But probably the most important part of this, though, is that leading with confidence facilitates positive role modeling and leading by example. And just keep in mind that if you're going to assume a leadership role, you really have to buy into the idea that the expectation of the people that you want to follow you has to be that they do as you do, not do as you say. So solid leadership means that, you lead with conviction also, that you do live out your values, you stick close to, what the organization is trying to do, and you try to meet, that very high bar that your team has set for what they expect from you as a leader. A very important role for any leader is to help the team understand what's important and why it's important. Okay, that's knowing, right? So as leaders, a big part of why we lead with confidence is we want our team to know. Your team should know. They should know that they can succeed. They should know that they have the tools, that they have the planning. So basically, solid leadership creates more leaders and confident leaders, among your team. So that's part of the reason that it is so important. So with that, let's kind of jump back into confidence and I guess just I'll give you my take on where confidence comes from. Because not everybody has it, but it's out there. In my mind, it's out there for everybody to grab. Excuse me. So first of all, hopefully everybody's picked up on this term knowing. Okay, that's a very important point in this presentation. Confidence is rooted in knowing that you're right. Okay. So you just think about the idea of being right. There are a number of different contexts of being right. Objectively right. Okay, so you can do the math and prove you're right. Man, that's the best kind of right, isn't it? Because nobody can argue with it if it's objective and provable. Technically, sometimes you're right. Not necessarily in a practical way, but in a technical way. And the people that you're leading may not always understand the technicality of what you're doing. So, it may be up to you to convince them that that you're technically right. And then the other one, probably the most important one, is ethically. You need to know that you're doing things right in an ethical context. So if you have one of those three things, or especially if you have all three of them, if you know that objectively, technically, and ethically you're right, you will be confident. Okay, hopefully everybody can understand that and buy into that. But just keep in mind, confidence is rooted in knowing that you're right. Okay, so obviously the next question is, well, how do we know we're right? Okay, and the answer is relatively simple: preparation. Okay, preparation. That's how we know we're right. In fact, all of you that are students, you know that naturally. Okay, if you prepare well, you know that you'll be right. But anyway, leaders must be well prepared for whatever the goal is. All of the ins and outs. Any of the obstacles you might run into, and so on. So anyway, just keep in mind that that concept of knowing that you're right. That's where confidence comes from. So one other thing to think about in this concept of knowing is, why would anybody follow your leadership? Do you know? I mean, it's just a simple question. I mean, how do people know to follow you? Okay, a lot of times it comes back to that confidence. So anyway, just keep in mind that knowing is a very important element in helping people to fall into line with your leadership. Okay, then finally, the last idea with confidence is that it's necessary that you have confidence in order to remain objective, in order to make fair decisions and lead fairly. And above all, confidence is required to promote growth. If you're not confident, in fact, this is an introspective type of a deal. If you're not confident, a lot of times as a leader, you're not comfortable, with growth among your staff. The most confident leaders, they surround themselves with people that know more than they do. They surround themselves with people that are going to grow. So their skills and their abilities will be beyond that of the leader. So anyway, just keep in mind that that's a big part of being able to promote that, is having confidence in yourself and your leadership abilities. And once again, don't mistake foolishness for confidence. Sometimes people rush into things and they seem like they've got it all together. But we do have to be critical, when we look at our leaders and make sure that it is confidence and not foolishness. We also have to assume that leading with confidence takes a lot of time and preparation. And one of the most important things when leading with confidence is that you do reserve the time to make sure that you're prepared. You don't allow yourself to be forced into making statements or decisions when you're not confident, when you're not prepared. Let's see, and also we need to stay aware, of the idea that, being objective is not as simple as it sounds. When you are leading a group, especially a diverse group, a lot of times there are competing interests. So it does make it difficult to be objective. But anyway, the basic formula is time plus preparation leads to confidence. Okay, so the better prepared you are, the most confident you will probably be. Most of you, I'm sure, whether you've ever said that out loud or not, I'm sure that you understand that. So let's just kind of shift gears to talk a little bit about how we lead or why we lead, or just some of the outline of leadership. Let's see. So how can you learn to lead? How do we learn to lead, and all of that? A couple of questions I have in my notes is it an academic pursuit or something that you're born with? Is there a formula for leadership? I mean, is there steps that you follow and then you'll be a leader and so on? So I just wanted to share with you a couple of models, that I've either been exposed to or that I've devised just through experience. That speak to leadership. They're really models for success, whether it's personal success or business success or sports success and all of that. But I personally, I think they apply to leadership. The first one, is a standard one, and most of you have probably been exposed to something like this. The model is based on the idea of commitment, hard work, and playing by the rules. So, I know I've heard some of these speeches before. Oh, you got to be committed to succeeding, and you got to be committed to doing whatever is necessary to prepare yourself to succeed. You've always got to keep your eye on the prize, and all of that. And then the second part, the hard work, and there's nothing in life good, that comes without some form of hard work. So, working hard is always, a part of models for success. And then the third part, playing by the rules. So commitment and hard work and playing by the rules. It kind of sounds like sports, doesn't it? Or competition or something like that. But it's a very legitimate model for leading. Okay. We as leaders need to be committed. We need to work hard, and we need to play by the rules. Okay. And that's what we want from our team. as well. Another one that I really like is something that I've used in presentations throughout my career, and this is kind of more a happiness model. I go through this whole thing about the purpose of life, being to achieve happiness, and so this is one of the models that I use to explain how you achieve happiness. But also, it's a model for success in life, but more than anything, a model for controlling your own destiny. And with that being a form of success. And this model just consists of three things: faith, hard work, and integrity. And so the first element, faith, that doesn't really speak to religion, or practicing a form of faith or anything like that. It's just a faith that you can achieve things, that good things can happen, and that you can create a better situation for whatever group or entity that you're leading. You just have to have faith that things can improve, that they can get better, and that you can achieve your goals. Hard work, that's a common component, of all of these models. So you believe things can happen, you have faith, you work hard. And then the third element is integrity. And particularly in a leadership context, integrity is really tied to you personally as a leader. If anybody is going to follow you, they've got to understand that your word means something. That your word is your bond. That you can be trusted, and so on. So just keep in mind, in any of these models, one of them, it's planned by the rules. The second one, it's integrity. But that aspect is probably the single most important. Having integrity or playing by the rules, because that allows the people that you're leading, to understand what you're going to do. It makes your leadership calculable, which is incredibly important in building trust with your team. From there, I just kind of want to jump into my personal model. And my personal leadership model, actually, a lot of people in the organization that I lead now could probably tell you a lot about this, because this is kind of more or less what I preach to my team at work right now. And it's based on what I consider to be three very important elements of leadership. Okay, the first element is taking care of each other. Okay, whatever that means under the circumstances that exist. Sometimes when I say that, people are kind of shocked, but that is one of the most important aspects of leadership as far as I'm concerned. The second one is always doing the right thing regardless of the consequences. That sounds difficult because it is difficult, okay? But one of the key elements of leadership is that your team understands that not only you as a leader, but they as a team, are obligated to always do the right thing regardless of the consequences. And then the third one is pretty straightforward, and that's honesty. Okay, got to be honest in all these different contexts. We got to be honest about how good things are, or how bad things are, or how well prepared people are, or all of those things. And the honesty thing comes back to, well, if you're honest, you don't have to remember anything. And I'll touch on that here in just a minute. But I guess going back to that first one, taking care of each other, may not seem like it would be part, of a leadership definition. But we've got to all consider that leadership consists primarily of taking care. Okay, take care of our organization, take care of the people that make up the organization, take care to steward our resources, take care to lead towards goals, and so on. Successful leaders will take care of the team, and the team will take care of the leader. And it's critical that your team understands that you sincerely care about their well-being beyond the workplace. That's a key element of leadership, because it's a key element of taking care. So your caring should be evident as a leader. That you care should be evident in practically everything that you do, but particularly how you communicate. Sometimes you run into leaders that, if they're having a bad day, then whoever they communicate with has to bear the brunt of that. It's important in this taking care idea that we communicate very well, that we are very sincere and that the way we communicate, our team understands that we understand that part of our role is to take care. How you supervise, when you supervise, there should be an element of care in there, and especially when you discipline. Okay, discipline, leadership and discipline should result in stronger, better prepared team members. So keep that in mind. That can only happen if you sincerely care about your team. Very briefly, taking care means that you are committed to building up the members of your team in a way which creates confidence. Okay, so does that sound familiar? Because it should. Okay, taking care creates more leaders. Okay, that's why it's so important, and that's how it fits into the leadership ideal, so to speak. There's the old cliche: people are the most important part of any organization. That may be a cliche, but it's a true cliche. True leaders recognize the importance of their team. They understand that their ability to harness the energy of their team will surely determine the level of success that they personally or their organization can be achieved. Different teams require different leadership styles, and successful, effective leaders will recognize that they must alter their style to fit the leadership needs of their respective team. But all of that comes back to having a sincere care for the people that make up your team. So take it to heart. The better you know your team on an interpersonal level, the better leader you're going to be, and the better team you're going to have. Now, the second element in my model is doing the right thing, regardless of the consequences. This sounds really simple, but it is incredibly difficult. Doing the right thing, it can be very difficult. The reason is, first, that not everybody agrees on what the right thing is in a given situation. So as a leader, you got to have a firm grasp of each situation in order to determine exactly what is the right thing to do. And if your team doesn't do the right thing regularly, got to understand what's preventing them from doing the right thing. Do they not know, or do they not agree on what the right thing is? Are they making self-interested or devious decisions? Or another factor is doing the right thing risky? And if doing the right thing is risky, then you as a leader have got to figure out how to mitigate that risk. How do you shield people from the risk so they can do the right thing consistently? So just consider how you help your team to understand what the right thing means consistently. For me, it's just three things. Okay, as a leader, I always have three. I don't know why it always ends up being three, but it's almost always three things. So you come up with philosophical parameters, that are relatively easy for people to remember, to keep them focused on what is the right thing to do. So I guess just to flesh that out, in my organization, the three things. Okay, number one, does it add value to the brand? Number two, does it add value to the team? Number three, does it enhance the customer experience? Okay, so my team, particularly in gaming, they know if whatever they're trying to do or whatever happened, if it doesn't fall into one of those three things, it may not be that important. And so anyway, try to think of what your three things or what your other philosophical parameters are, and that'll help everybody to understand what is the right thing to do. For me, another important aspect of trying to help the team understand the right thing to do is it's storytelling. I had a lot of analogies, jokes, and things like that. As long as I can create the right context with a story or an example, that's really powerful in helping people to understand what the right thing to do. But probably the most effective method is role playing. Not everybody is comfortable with role playing, but it is incredibly effective. I had an experience as a young manager, where somebody asked me point blank, well, what the heck did you expect me to do? And so, I got lucky and kind of fell into this role-playing thing to teach that person exactly how I expected them to react in the situation, and just really discovered the value of it, as a communication tool, as a leadership tool, and so on. So I would highly recommend to any of you that are in a leadership position or that are seeking a leadership position, get comfortable with role modeling. That's one way that you can illustrate to your team exactly what your expectations are. And then finally, the third element, okay, we've let's see. Let me just summarize. Okay, we talked about 3 elements. The first one, taking care of each other. The second one, doing the right thing. So the third and final one is a basic honesty. I'm a student of quotations, and one of my favorite quotes is, "If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything." Okay, it's a Mark Twain quote, and it's true. It's reality. As long as you stick to the truth that you know, you don't have to remember anything. It's always in there. But also consider telling the truth can be difficult. This is just interpersonal, practical interpersonal advice. It can be difficult if you know it's going to hurt somebody's feelings. Okay, it's even more difficult if the truth conflicts with your plans. Okay, so like you want to do something, but the truth, is something other than that. That's a dilemma there. If it conflicts with your plans, your expectations, or your worldview. Yeah, so being honest is not necessarily a simple thing. But the more honest, the more straightforward you can be as a leader, the easier it is for people to follow you, because they understand, the objective nature of what you're trying to do. And so keep in mind, honesty is both an internal and an external issue. And you got to be honest with yourself, as well as the people that are around you. I always use the term blurted out. Okay, well, look, I'm just going to blurt this out, because I can't sugarcoat it. And I'm worried if I try and be tactful that I may not be honest. So a lot of times I just have to blurt things out very frankly. That technique works for me in my group. So just a little bit of advice here. You must be truthful with yourself in order to be truthful to others. And unless you've got a great memory, you should be as honest as possible. Okay, I've got a terrible memory, so I try to stick to honesty as much as possible. The big benefit of honesty, of answering that challenge, is your team will believe you when you say you know. Okay, so don't underestimate the necessity as a leader of knowing. Okay, and the second part, don't underestimate the value as a leader of having your team be able to believe that you know. Okay, that you know where you're going, you know how to get there, you know what things have to happen along the way, and above all, that you know that you will succeed. Okay, and with that, I really once again want to thank Tate, and the associated students, as well as the college, for the opportunity to be here today. I really hope this was productive, and I hope that it inspires some thought and some discussion. I think we do have time for a few questions. But anyway, thanks again to everybody here at LC. Stay safe, wear your mask, wash your hands, keep your distance. Have a great day, and go Warriors. Okay, so with that, I'd be willing to attempt to answer any questions that anybody has. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kermit. I think we've got sub 143. We've got a few students there that hadn't able to stick around after without going to classes, and they might have a few questions to ask. Emily is down there in sub 143. Emily, do you have a list of questions for us? And if
you can go first.
Unmute it.
Hello, my name is Kason. I don't know if you can hear me, but I had 2 questions for you. The first one was earlier towards the beginning of your discussion, you were talking about how you had people in your life who were encouraging you to know that you can do anything, that anything is possible, and all of that. But what would you recommend for people who didn't have family or stable people in their lives growing up that encouraged them that they could do anything? So they never had any of that validation, and they might not have had experiences either to kind of encourage that leadership ability. So what would you recommend for building confidence for people like that?
Yeah, well, that's that's a tough one, because I was very fortunate, and a lot of us, whether regardless of the economic background you come from, being surrounded by family that wants you to succeed, is very important, and it makes success and commitment to success much simpler. If you don't have that kind of support, number one, you've got, just going back to the model that I discussed earlier, number one, you got to have faith that things can get better. So the most important thing in that situation, is just to understand what you're trying to achieve. So sometimes it's relatively simple. Sometimes you just want something different, than what you have. I will share with you, I'll share some personal information. I come from I grew up really poor. So, that, plus I was fortunate to have a lot of people, supporting and motivating me, but I got absolutely no problem admitting part of the reason I pursued education was because I wanted a better economic situation for my family, than the one that I grew up with. So personally, I like to believe that, even if I didn't have the support systems behind me, that I would always, keep my eye on that goal. I would understand what my priorities are, and I'd be willing to make the sacrifices, to get there. So just keep in mind, for those people that don't have the support system, you just got to be prepared to, to rise up on your own and create, sometimes from scratch, those things that that you deserve, but you don't have. But anyway, a lot of that, though, it does come back to the idea of faith, not religion, but just faith, that things can get better, and that idea that you can do anything that you set your mind to. So my recommendation for anybody in that situation would be, look for these role models, whether they're people in your neighborhood or your community, whether they're media figures or sports figures, or, I do a lot of reading, that helps me to stay motivated. So, some of the authors that help me to understand the world around me, in particular is, Gladwell, Malcolm Gladwell. If you haven't read him, you want to take a look at that, and, maybe that would help you to understand, the world that we live in. And so I hope that, that helps. I'm not sure that I answered your question, but I hope that those comments help a little bit.
I can hold my second question.
Okay, I can go. So you talked quite a bit about being an LC alum. I was wondering what your most memorable experience was here at LC, whether in a leadership position or otherwise.
Boy, that's a tough one. I've got a really a romanticized, memory of this, of this place. It was really an idyllic, type of a college experience for me. So, and I was able to get involved in a lot of things, including student government and all of that. But, I would have to say, though, it's still probably the single most memorable experience from me as an alumnus, was, getting married and, having, my daughter Savannah born, while I was here. As I mentioned in my introduction, that just kind of permanently bonded me to this place. But otherwise, I guess just to share a little bit about what it was like when I was here. I'm a native person. I'm from out in Sweetwater, and when I was here, I guess kind of the most memorable non-family part of it was it was an era, so to speak. I ended up being the president of the students. Very good friend of mine, dear friend of mine that I grew up with, Georgia Overly, was a student here, and she was Miss Indian America at the time. We began Native American Awareness Week, during my tenure, and that's something that, that still occurs annually. Bob Sabota, who I'm sure a lot of you know, but Bob and Pat played on the basketball team. A couple of very good friends of mine, Jim and Johnson Layton, played on the basketball team. There just was a lot of stuff happening around here that made this place really very comfortable for me as an individual. And so I would have to say just that whole era was just really memorable for me. And so, yeah, I just had a wonderful experience here. And I hope all the students feel the same way about this place that I do.
All right. Well, as we're winding down here, I just want to thank you again, Kermit, for taking the time to come back to campus. It's been great to have you on. And, we are excited about this LC Leadership Series. And this is actually part of a bigger project. And we've got Holly Doherty here that we're going to bring on in just a second. But I wanted to put up on the slide here, for those of you that want to learn more about the LC State Leadership Series, you can go to our website, or you can tune in through our Facebook page or Instagram. And with that, I'll bring Holly on. And Holly, if you wouldn't mind just taking a minute or two just to talk about the LC Leadership Certificate that students can plug into and build skills towards, and walk away with a micro-credential that's recognized in the state.
Yeah. So again, I just want to say thank you to Tate and Kermit both for kind of helping launch this series. And then also to our CSL advisory board, because this has been kind of a work in progress for the last year. So it's kind of exciting to see it actually take flight. I wish it was live and not necessarily through Zoom, but that's okay. We'll get there. So like Tate mentioned, this is the first of a monthly series that we're going to start hosting through the Center for Student Leadership. We're hoping to host an LC Leadership Spotlight series the third week of each month during the academic year. So when we're on break, of course, we won't host these series. But later on, sorry, I'm getting notes. But then we'll be hosting the LC Leadership series, hopefully every third week of the month. And the Leadership Spotlight is meant to bring in current and past leaders from our Warrior family. So just like today, where we saw Kermit talking as an LC alum, we'll also have some other speakers where they're actual current faculty here at LC State. The LC Spotlight Leadership Series, along with our up-and-coming Skills Builder series, will actually be some opportunities where students can learn about our leadership credential and start earning credit towards a leadership credential that's recognized here in the state of Idaho. And this leadership credential is actually newly developed, so launched just this year. But basically, there's different ways for students to earn leadership-based skills that they can take further into their career. And it basically just helps students take the words of our LC mission and put them into action. So it's a 3-tier process where students are able to join different events like this. They're able to take some of the experiences that they're learning maybe in clubs and organizations, and then they are able to go through and plug those into new experiences. So if you're interested in learning more about that credential, or if you would like to get signed up to start earning it, all you have to do is send a quick email over to studentinvolvement@lcsc.edu. And I will also put that in the comments for our Facebook Live guests. So thank you guys again. This was pretty exciting to get it kicked off.
All right, thank you. And we will have more information going out to you soon about the spring series and what we have coming up. So thanks again, and we'll catch you on the next one.